guys, what's up? It's Cole. Okay, right, try to go quickly. I did a take of this before and I went over. So, okay, today we're doing some more Alan Moore, but this time more focused. Last time I did Alan Moore was just a collection of various stuff he did. This is one specific thing, and that's book one of his famous run on the DC comic Swamp Thing. Collected here. I guess this is a fairly newish collection in that I've read that for whatever reason earlier collections didn't include the first issue he did. That would be issue number 20, called Loose Ends. Called Loose Ends simply because he's basically tying up the story points that were in the previous arc and then taking things in his own direction. Okay, so Alan Moore was basically an unknown in North America at this point. This is really what got him on the map as far as comic books in North America go, coming over for DC. A little background on the character. Swamp Thing was invented by Len Wein in 1971, kind of very quickly. I think the story in here says something like he came up with a short story involving his creation just on a subway ride, going to meet an editor. Anyway, he went on from there. His first appearance was in House of Secrets number 92, and from there he spun off into his own series about this scientist called Alec Holland, who'd been working on some government project, and there were some people tried to kill him. There was an explosion, and he was down in the deep south in a cabin in the swamp, and his body's blown out into the bayou there, and he's supposed to come back as this very plant-like, vegetable-type creature, monster, the Swamp Thing. And from there, we get a cast of supporting characters built up. Matt Cable, a government agent, first sent down to hunt him down. An arch-nemesis in Arcane, Arcane's niece, who comes to be one of his friends, and so on. So anyway, so that ran throughout the 70s. Into the late 70s, it was dying off. Couldn't really keep the same team of writers or artists going. And then, of course, the DC implosion of around 1978 and so on basically led to its demise. Someday we'll talk about the DC implosion because it's a pretty interesting thing, but we'll just skip it for now. And it looked like the series was probably going to be dead, except that in 1982, Wes Craven, who I'm sure you're familiar with, master of horror in movies, wanted to make a movie based on Swamp Thing, and he did, and it's an interesting enough movie. It's fun. It's kind of a campy type of movie, based pretty much directly on the events of that first volume, and I mean it is fairly faithful to that. And if there's weaknesses, it's just because, well, maybe it wasn't that great of a comic to begin with. But anyway, so for all intents and purposes, the comic might have been dead except for that movie coming out. So Len Wein, who was, after being in Marvel for a while, you might remember that he created Wolverine, was back with DC, and he suggested that they try to relaunch the title to coincide with the movie's release. So the next volume came out, and I guess it was going a little better, and they were fleshing out things, and but then they were losing the writer. Which writer was that? That was Martin Pasco, and Alan Moore was asked to come in and replace him. And Alan Moore, like I said, wasn't really known, and this is really what got him known. So, in typical Alan Moore fashion, even back then, he really wanted to do things his own way, but although, of course, he wanted to make certain changes to the character, and everyone, I think, basically agrees they were for the best. In issue 20 here, at Loose Ends, it basically has the Sunderland Corporation hunting down the Swamp Thing and taking it out. It ends with him, like, supposedly dying in a hail of gunfire, so he seems to be dead. And then we pick up with the next issue, the Anatomy Lesson, which I'll try to be brief, but I just do want to gush about because it's one of the best, like, single issues of any comic I've ever read anywhere. It's just, you know, even just as a perfect standalone piece, it's mesmerizing, if you ask me, just how well constructed and written it is. It's just one of those stories where, you know, you start basically at the end, and then it's like a flashback telling you how we got to this point. Except the end we're shown, we don't really understand it. So by the time we've come full circle, we understand everything. And I mean, we've seen that before, but maybe not so much before this. Remember, this is the mid-'80s. And it's just masterfully written. I love how it is. I'll just read a little bit of the intro here. One thing Moore does a lot is shifting narrative, shifting perspectives, going from one to another with an internal monologue. It's raining in Washington tonight. Plump, warm summer rain that covers the sidewalks with leopard spots. Downtown, elderly ladies carry their houseplants out to set them on the fire escapes, as if they were infirm relatives or boy kings. It goes on from there. And anyway, then we get the story, and it's about Jason Woodrue, the Floronic Man, sort of a minor DC character, a villain, you know, sort of like, oh, he's a plant guy, that I guess various members of the Justice League would tangle with from time to time, never have much trouble. I don't even know, this is probably his first appearance in quite some time. He's hired by the head of the Sunderland Corporation to study the body they've taken of Swamp Thing. And this explains, and as I said, this flashback explains what he discovers. And one of the things he discovers is it's not dead, and that it actually can be revived if they thaw it out, which is what's going to happen here. But also, the big discovery and the big thing that Alan Moore did was that he took it so that it wasn't... Swamp Thing is not Alec Holland. He's not a scientist who died and then was transformed. Alec Holland did die. What it is he made Swamp Thing this sort of entity, this elemental whose consciousness sort of awakened when it combined with the death of Alec Holland, and it absorbed his memories and consciousness, so it thought that he was Alec Holland. So anyway, this issue ends with that. Woodrue moving on to study him and also freeing the Swamp Thing, who was very confused at first. The next issue is all about, has a lot of internal stuff going on, like a journey sort of inside his mind. It's all about him sort of like coming to grips with the idea that he's not human, he never was human, and that sort of stuff. Yeah, so we've got all this, it's like a journey into his mind or whatever like that. Eventually he started lugging around this skeleton, which I suppose is supposed to be his own skeleton. It's my humanity, it's all I've got left, so he's lugging it around. Eventually it's just like the skull. Here we go, and it's sort of like Hamlet, the whole scene, you know, Yorick and that sort of thing. Very cool, very well done. I marked off a page here in that issue just because, again, another example of Alan Moore's wonderful writing that he brought into comics. I mean, he wasn't the first, but I mean, just a great example. I mean, I defy anybody to come up with more beautiful imagery than this. We just have a sunset here over this small motel, and you just get sunset over Huma. The rains have stopped. Clouds like plugs of bloody cotton wool dab ineffectually at the slashed wrists of the sky. And it's just gorgeous imagery. I mean, just wonderful, wonderful writing. I defy you to find anything better. And this is all part of the process of comic books becoming a more serious literary medium and being more widely accepted and more critically appreciated and understood. So then the arc moves on. Woodrue, the Floronic Man, sort of starts really going mad and has this whole idea of basically taking over the Earth with vegetation. It's very interesting because eventually we do get the Justice League, and they are watching the situation from their their headquarters out in space. And basically the conclusion they come to is they can't stop him. And of course it's Swamp Thing that stops him, but he stops in a very non-superhero way. He more or less, you know, just approaches him and talks to him and explains to him what he's doing and how he's actually hurting the Earth. You know, he wants to purge the Earth of humans and animals and let vegetation take over, and he basically explains to him how that will backfire because they need each other to survive. Very, very nicely done. There's another great line by Moore where he's just very briefly talking about the Justice League, and he describes the Flash. And I can't see it here, but it's somewhere in here. It's something like a man who moves so fast that his life is an endless display, an endless display of statues, which I think is very poetic. Right, so eventually we even have, also in these, we have an appearance by Jason Blood, also the demon Etrigan, as he fights some sort of weird nightmare entity that seems to be attacking these children that one of the characters who's a friend of Swamp Thing is taking over. Some very interesting, disturbing imagery going on there, including a reference to child molestation, which I think is sort of edgy, at least for the time. I don't have time, I'll have to stop, but a great read no matter what you're into, and definitely check it out. I'll see you guys soon. Yeah, back with the laptop. I think it works better. Bye-bye.